2, 1. This hangout is now live. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Chattering with Nicholas Vince. And here I am chattering with Chris Alexander. Say hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Why do I always do that?
So I'm not the first. Okay.
You're not the first. I really have to learn a new line for this introduction.
I'm a cliche. I apologize.
Not in the slightest. You're not the cliche. I'm the cliche. They give it setting up the same gag each individual time.
Yes.
Happy New Year to you, sir. Did you have a good New Year and Christmas?
I did. I have 3 children, so when you have that many humans that you've made, and they're that young, which mine are young. I also have a terrible holiday cold, by the way. So sorry to everybody. I'll try not to breathe too heavy on you. But it was good. It was just insane. Like it's nuts. And also, they're at this point now. The older guy is starting to question the ultimate lie that we tell our children, if you believe in this Judeo-Christian holiday that we celebrate, that there's a Santa Claus. We start our careers with our children feeding them lines of bullshit. So they're just starting to kind of see through the matrix a little bit and ask a lot of questions about the science of Santa Claus. And I'm starting to feel a little bit like a heel. So there was a little bit of a dark side to the Christmas season this year, I think. I don't know how much longer I can keep the wizard behind the curtain. So.
And it's very interesting because I think when you've got 3 boys?
I do, yeah.
You've got 3 boys, which is more or less the same as my family as well.
Yeah.
So I think I can't remember, but and in my case, there was only 3 years between us. And I think we kind of all sussed it out at the same time, but are you going to have to kind of keep the lie going for one of them, or do you
Impossible. I mean, I have an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 4-year-old. So the 4-year-old is wise to the world. He's a man of the world. He knows things that he shouldn't know because of these guys. There's no way. I mean, once the cat's out of the bag, he's out. There's just no way. So I mean, that's fine too, because then I'll feel more like an honest dad. I just hope I don't bust them up too much, because I remember the first time when I found that out. And I wanted a typewriter for Christmas. And I was just trying to figure out, like, well, how can this be? I live in an apartment, first of all. There's no fucking chimney. How does this work? My balcony is like 2 people can fit on this motherfucker. How? Anyways, I snuck into my mom's room, and there was the typewriter in a hope chest. I'm like, okay, the jig's up. And my heart just blew up, That was the end of the innocence right there. So it's bound to happen to all of us, and it's going to happen to us soon.
Yeah, no, I think I remember it. The one thing I do remember about Christmas actually is just, and I don't know if you do this, are presents placed under the Christmas tree? Or
yes.
Yeah. Of course, in my family, they weren't. They were actually brought into your bedroom.
Ah.
And I just remember this waking up with the weight of Christmas presents in a pillowcase. At the foot of the bed. I mean, in the time I'm talking about, we're talking about the late 1950s, very early 1960s. So they're going to be small plastic toys, little soldiers on cars and things like that. And just that magical weight of the presents on the foot of your bed and on your feet when you knew that Father Christmas had been. And then, of course, the following year, just waking up and realizing, there wasn't even a Santa costume. It was Dad walking in with the pillowcase.
So we basically tell our children that every once a year we allow someone to home invade us. Essentially, it's okay. Every other day it's not good, but the one day we just let this crazy old man come into our house and just dump a bunch of shit on your bed and then walk out. Very strange and vaguely sinister for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely cool. And what about New Year? Did you go out for New Year? With 3 boys, I guess.
I have 3 boys. I'm also, my days of sowing my stupidity are, if not gone, then they're dormant at this point. And the last thing I want to do is run around. First of all, I got to find a babysitter, which sucks.
Yeah.
Then I got to run around on New Year's Eve trying to find cabs and getting shit-faced, and then be completely out of commission the next day, which just doesn't work in my life. So I had a very quiet New Year's Eve in. Actually, I went out to see a film called Brooklyn, not a horror film at all, an Irish-Canadian film with Charisse Ronan, beautiful movie. I was the only person under 80, I think, in the theater. It was all octogenarian couples dressed to the nines. It was a very surreal, almost sociological experience to sit there amongst all these couples and watch this really just genuinely nice movie where no one gets hurt. The ending is as happy as the beginning. It's not Angela's Ashes, Ireland, where people are starving in the lanes of Limerick with the alcoholic father. It's a very, very happy movie. So that was a nice way to kind of gently usher in the new year.
It sounds very funny. And I think I was given the book 3 years ago for Christmas
Okay.
as a Christmas present.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I ever actually managed to sit around. I'm terrible, complete Gemini as far as books. I always have dozens on the go at the same
So
time,
do
and
I.
yeah,
Yeah.
I just I never actually got around to that one. Cool. All of that sounds like it sounds like a great deal of fun. We just had an awful lot of fireworks. It
Mhm.
actually got ridiculous this year. This has only happened in this country since the millennium. We've had fireworks, and Bertie, our dog, was getting really pissed off by 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, normally he's really kind of cool and he's down with it. He understands what, because it starts on November the 5th normally. But it was ridiculous. I've never heard it so loud. So he was very pissed off.
Our neighbor used to do his amateur fireworks display on the street. So he'd have piles and piles. He'd go and spend, I don't know, probably about $1,000 on these, mom and pop spinning, screaming, devil sirens and everything else, and just put on this little show. And it was great, but it was pretty loud. And so I think it was last year or 2 years ago. He had the little box of, I don't know what they are, but they started to shoot the rockets up, and I guess it had burned a hole in the side of the box, and the fucking rocket shot out and blew across the street right into my son's leg. Boom! Burned through his pants, burned a hole in his leg, blew up in his face so he couldn't see. He was like blinded for like half an hour. It was insane. And thus ended the fireworks displays in my neighborhood, at least for the time being. Yeah.
Yeah,
Crazy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's the idea of fireworks in cardboard boxes. Never a good idea.
No, it's not, and it's another one of those things that, it's funny. People always say, Chris, your favorite time of year must be Halloween. And I said, well, not really, because every day is Halloween, first of all. I like this stuff all the time. And if anything, it kind of drives me a bit insane that what we allow, it's kind of socially acceptable, deemed acceptable based on something that's marked on a calendar that we've created, that we're allowed to like this grand guignol and blood and guts. You go into one of these Halloween stores at Halloween, it's severed heads and it's guts and it's zombies and it's werewolves and it's kids shitting their pants as soon as they walk into this abattoir. And then the next day you pack it all up and you're never allowed to talk about it again for another year. Kids are not allowed to watch this stuff. This is damaging. This is seduction of the innocent. And the same thing goes with these holiday seasons, is that, pyromania is a bad thing. Lighting shit on fire and blowing stuff up, shooting people, not good. But it's okay, like on the 4th of July, or it's okay on Christmas or New Year's or something like that, to blow shit up, and then suddenly it's not again. So we're a very strange species of socialized people.
Well, it
Yes.
is the whole idea of Saturnalia, isn't it? So the whole idea that you try and keep society absolutely under control, and
Yes.
everybody's nice to each other. And then one day, everyone knows that you have to blow the lid off every so often.
It's like
Uh,
it's like those Blumhouse movies, The Purge 1 and 2, basically is what it is, right? Just
mm,
let everyone go out and just murder each other and rob and kill and rape for one night just to get it out of your system, and then the next day it's bad again.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's
So,
very,
anyways, to
very.
answer your question in a long way, yeah, my Christmas is just fun.
I've never stuck to a topic on this show yet.
Good, good,
Though
good.
I do actually have some questions I want to ask you and talk about about what you're up to now, and previously what and so on. So I was looking at your website, and kind of basically you've always seemed to have, as far as I can see and as far as I understand, you've always had three careers. There's you as a writer, kind of recently you as a filmmaker, but for a long time as well a composer. Does
Hmm.
that kind of sum it all up? Or
You know what? In a way, I've just never been one. I've never been in love with the idea that you do one thing and then you die.
mm,
I've never adhered to that. And to me, being someone who likes what I like, and I've always liked what I liked since I was a little boy, and been fairly artistic and creative and talented. I can draw. I can play any instrument that's given to me. I can make some sounds out of it that makes sense. And also having some semblance of an idea of how things move and with films and time and space. It's always been about expressing what I like and what my observations about the world. So to me, one medium is as good as the next. It's never. I think writing is music to me. The only reason I became a composer is I went to film school, and I didn't get my tuition, so I had to drop out because I couldn't afford to make movies. Because this was right before video hit, and it was like $30 to buy a 2 minute reel of 16 millimeter film, and then another $35 to develop that. It's 2 minutes, so you got to make those 2 minutes count. I didn't have any use of editing, so I would be editing movies on a with a flashlight and a pair of scissors. It was really brutal, and so I couldn't make movies, but I could make soundtracks to movies in my head, and then create live stage shows where I could use projections and create live kind of theater and drama based on the music I was performing. So to me, I've always been making movies or making music or doing something like that. It doesn't matter the medium. So I don't consider it really like a myriad careers. I consider it just one guy who loves what he loves and manages to feed his family based on that using a variety of mediums.
Okay, so I mean, if we that's very interesting because one of the questions I wanted to ask you now is the creative process when you sit down to write something and the creative process of composing, and also when I say write, you obviously write reviews, you write text, you write articles, very erudite articles on films that you've seen, and so on. Do you consciously have a different technique, or do you kind of hit in the same way? And here's the question for you: do you hear a phrase, i.e., a phrase of music, or do you hear a line of dialogue, or do you just have an idea? How does the creative process start for you in all these different ways?
Well, it starts with having the burning desire to do it. Usually by seeing something or hearing someone speak or reading something that inspires me enough where I say, I have to say something as well. And I've always been kind of a practical guy in the sense that I don't write for the sake of writing. I don't make music for the sake of making music. And I do stuff with purpose. I wanted to make those 3 movies I've made so far, and I didn't just make them, even though they were incredibly cheap. I went to a distributor and got them to pay for it, and it's a very small amount of money, just to ensure I knew that what I was making would have distribution at the end. And I don't care about if I make any money off it, as long as it gets seen and heard and exhibited to some degree. And the same goes with my music or my writing. There has to be a point or a purpose to it beyond just expressing. There has to be an audience waiting for it to absorb and consume it to some degree. Otherwise, it's not. It's a very. I don't have the time anymore. When I was younger, I did, but I don't anymore. It has to mean something. But when I'm actually, I mean, if you read my writing, you said erudite features on films, and thank you. But if you read my stuff, it's just very simple observations of what I'm seeing. But I like to think that there's a kind of rhythm to the dialogue. There's a kind of music to the way the words, and sometimes I make up words, or I go on and I run on sentences that go on, and people have criticized me about that. I'm like, well, it's intentional. I'm trying to create a long rhythm. A lot of the stuff I write works really well if you say it aloud. It's meant to have that kind of music. And so when I sit down with keyboards, a guitar, or anything else, it's the same thing. I'm just trying to create an environment using notes, whether they be words or actual legitimate notes or images that express some way I feel.
Interesting. Okay, so I know when listening to you there, I remember writing a short story. And it's recollected in my first collection of short stories, where somebody said, it's like poetry. And again, it is just that thing. I mean, I'm no composer in the slightest. I really don't. I can sing. I can.
Have you tried? Have you actually tried to make music? Have you tried to?
I wouldn't know where to begin. I mean, I can read music. I understand notation. I used to play piano. I just don't. I've never really sat down. I think once when I was a teenager, I kind of had a song in my head, and I put some, and I tried to get somebody to, but I don't know how to get it from there, even if I'm singing it, how to get it onto a keyboard and then do that transference and so on. But it's interesting. I was listening to an article about a composer. Her name escapes me, a very popular American composer. And she was saying that the lady saying that she was listening to this composer in the other room, and literally he was playing a note, then he played another note, then he played one up, and then he played another up, and then he went up tones and semitones until he had two pieces. He had two notes that worked together, and then to get the third, he'd just go a semitone down or a tone down until and he was literally laying it out step by step by step. And I think that's the only way that I could possibly just think, oh yeah, that would be it. And then I think, I don't know about you, but I'd just be terrified of plagiarizing somebody.
Mm. Well, you know what? There's a composer. I'm Canadian. I'm in Toronto, and there's a great Canadian film composer who not a lot of people talk about because he's Canadian, and not unless you're David Cronenberg, really nobody talks about you. But his name is Paul. Sorry, just my lung coming out. Don't worry about it.
That's fine.
His name is Paul Zaza, and trying to think some of the movies you may know, like My Bloody Valentine,
right,
or A Christmas Story. You know, one of the quintessential holiday films. A Christmas Story was his. Did he do Black Christmas? No, but he worked primarily with the director Bob Clark. Anyways, just a magnificent composer, completely undervalued. And I urge you all to explore his works. Paul Zaza is his name. He's retired now, but I interviewed him shortly before his retirement. And I asked him certain things about, does this inspire you? I hear a bit of this in this track you did. He says, well, not consciously at all, but every single composer rips off every other single composer, whether they like to or not. It's just the way it is. I mean, there's no such thing as an original composition. You'll be able to find somehow, trace it down through other people's work. I mean, that goes from the great composers who were cribbing off classical music. I mean, it's just, there's no such thing as an. So you can't worry about stuff like that. You just have, and it's not, what's the old, I'm going to butcher it here, but it's not the tale, it's the teller. I mean, I think that goes with any medium as well. It's, as long as you're being honest and pure, I really think that even if you end up accidentally cribbing from something you subconsciously heard, it's still going to have enough of your DNA in it to make it your own, or at least that should be your goal.
Interesting, very, very interesting. I think I'm always just scared that lawyers when reads such
right.
things about the lawyers get hold of you, and
you won't have to worry about that unless you make millions of dollars and somebody thinks, hey, that little note, that 4/4, that tempo sounds a lot vaguely like that thing I wrote 40 years ago that nobody heard. That guy must have ripped me off. Maybe I can get a few shekels out of this. Then you got to worry about it. But if you're just doing it kind of bubbling in the underground, fuck it, just do what you want.
Yeah, no, I suspect mine would be bubbling away on the underground. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Whilst we've been talking, a gentleman called Derek who's sent in a question. Okay, do you feel that a lot of mainstream filmmakers are trying to make horror too young teen friendly? Even when it's clearly meant to be more late teens and upwards, they still try to add stuff for the younger crowd. So I guess what Derek's asking is, do you think, and particularly in horror and other genres, but particularly in horror, I guess, do you think that filmmakers are pandering, are really just working for that demographic, and to the sufferance of the art?
Well, we're talking about mainstream filmmakers, so obviously we mean Hollywood filmmakers. And one thing I think is important for you to realize is that, Hollywood filmmakers have always been kind of pandering to somebody, and usually it's pandering to teens. I mean, there was a spike in the 1970s, we'll say, where things get a little bit bloodier and edgier and nastier. But they were still pandering to teens. It just so happened that the teens would be piling into cars and going into drive-ins, and a lot of kids were seeing a lot of weird shit at the time. But it's a different world now in the sense that this is big business now. And, if you look at the 1950s, I'm going all over the place, but let's go back to the 1950s very quickly and look at what happened to Hollywood cinema, in the sense that a little invention called television was suddenly in everybody's living room. And suddenly people weren't spending that money to go to the movies anymore. They were staying at home. And so Hollywood was shitting their pants, and they were coming up with everything they could to get you back into the theaters in order to keep the party going, man. Because, it's Hollywood, right? And if they see that happening, it's a big threat. What are they going to do? So that's when you get 3D. House of Wax birthed the whole the first wave of 3D in the 1950s. You get, Cinerama, 70 millimeter, all this shit, giant Technicolor screaming here and there, lavish musicals, stuff that you can't get on the small screen. This is something you need to sit in an environment. So by the same token, now here we are in our contemporary age when there's so many alternatives. to absorb and consume media. Hollywood has long been in a state where they're losing money rapidly, and they're trying to make movies that are popular enough that they can appeal to all demographics, not just teenagers, but everybody. So when you see a horror movie opening up on a Friday night at your local multiplex down the street, unless it's rated NC-17 or the equivalent in wherever you live, I would suspect that it's not a horror movie made for a horror movie fan. It's a horror movie made for young people going out together and hoping to maybe get a little action in the back row. I mean, it's a date movie. It's exactly what it is. The Saw movies didn't do well because serious cerebral horror fans were lining up with their money to see a real serious, the next Exorcist or The Omen or something. It was date night movies from people that don't watch horror movies. That's what they were made for. But the interesting thing about horror is that today's popular piece of shit, give it 20 years and it becomes tomorrow's cult film. So all these movies that were kind of, yeah, this Friday night, this movie sucks, that remake sucks, this sucks. 20 years, someone's going to discover it again, dust it off. Once the zeitgeist is eliminated and the whole climate changes, they're going to find this movie and then champion it as some sort of unheralded gem. It's just the way horror movies work. So to sum it up, if you're looking for good horror movies, you don't have to look very, very far. Just don't look at the multiplex. All around the world, all the time, in the underground and elsewhere, people are making really, really interesting, amazing horror movies. In fact, I've noticed that something I'm excited about is I've noticed a lot of filmmakers trying to make horror movies kind of covertly. A movie like Under the Skin, for instance, which is marketed as a Scarlett Johansson science fiction movie, is really a horror film. Bone Tomahawk, a movie that I've been jazzing about all year, is a Western with Kurt Russell, but it's really, kind of a remake of Cannibal Holocaust in a way. So they're sneaking horror movie tropes in the back door and delivering stronger horrific experiences, but they're hiding it under the guise of another genre. So if you're a smart horror fan, you got to get out there, just kind of like, don't accept what's given to you and spoon fed to you. That's not for you. You got to do a little bit of work and search around and sniff around, and you'll find something good. Trust me.
Interesting, very interesting. And we've just had a question in from a gentleman called David Malcolm, who regular viewers of this show might recognize. From my Facebook feed, David's currently editing my first short film. He's the editor on The Night Whispered.
Right.
And David asks, Chris, your first 3 films recall Jess Franco. What area of the genre will you go to next? Giallo, perhaps?
Yeah, I always say Jess Franco, but then what happens is that people get let down by my films because they're not Jess Franco movies. I think a lot of people who are vaguely familiar with Franco will think of his movies as pornography. And same thing with Jean Rollin, another huge influence on me as well. But if you really know Franco and Rollin and you really gravitate towards those kinds of European films, it's not the sense that there's tits or ass or something. With Franco, it was like zoom lens into Lena Romay's vagina nonstop. I mean, he had to make movies a certain way in order to market them to the porn crowd at the time. I mean, these movies were made again for a demographic, to to make money. But at the core of these great Franco movies is obsession, lingering obsession, long takes. I think Franco once famously said, "I'm not just a voyeur when it comes to sex or nudity. I get off just the same staring at a sailboat in the horizon." I mean, and that's when you watch his most famous movie, Vampiros Lesbos. He'll be filming 2 lesbians going at it, and then suddenly the camera will veer out into the ocean and just look at a sailboat the distance and hold that frame for like 5 minutes while this incredible Middle Eastern funk is playing. I mean, it's just weird shit. So to me, that's what Franco is, and that's what I try to bring to the table in my movies. It's just an easier hook if you say they're Franco-esque because they're a little bit more obsessive than the average horror film, I think. But certainly next, I've made 2 vampire movies that were revisionist vampire movies. One revisionist psychological David Lynchian werewolf movie, and now I am kind of making another movie that kind of plays with giallo tropes a little bit, but it's not a traditional giallo film. I think I keep making Repulsion over and over and over, and that's probably what I'll do because I love stories about females, women on the verge of nervous breakdowns, and I just like making these stories about women I love women on every level, and then hiding them again with using the hook for the fangs and the blood and the werewolves and the black love killers or whatever you got. But really, you're telling a story about women put under great pressure. You know.
It's interesting because one of the things because I was watching Blood for Irina today, and I'm thinking, oh, there are no fangs. This lady doesn't
No.
have fangs, and I thought that was very interesting. As you
Well, I
said,
mean, in Blood for Irina too, you're always trying to play with the idea that she's not a vampire at all, that she's just a very sick woman, who maybe has lost her child, or there's something has happened in her life where she, it's not a movie about vampires are turning into bats. It's about someone who's completely lonely and living on the fringe of the world and unable to connect with anything or anyone. And is kind of in a state of self-torment because of something that happened to her. So there's that kind of going on there in the background. But if you're talking about vampires in cinema, I mean, Bela Lugosi didn't have fangs either. So, right? I mean, he didn't have any fangs at all. So, cinemas outside of Nosferatu, Hollywood's first vampire, never flashed a fang.
Interesting. You're absolutely right, of course, and it just never occurred to me. All I remember about Bela Lugosi is the armadillo in Transylvania. That's what I love about that movie more than anything else.
I think that's my takeaway from it too, because I don't love that movie. I really don't. I don't think it's the best, a great film. But certainly the stuff in Transylvania is great, and the fucking armadillo is the greatest WTF moment in early post-code horror movies for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is the one moment where he's walking up the stairs and he walks through the spider's web as he's coming up.
The giant spider web.
Yeah, the huge giant, and he just walks through it, and it's just like, I remember just getting a chill about that one. I completely, completely understand about that. Now, I'm just going to ask Craig. Actually, I'm just going to say this out loud. We've got at least another 2 or 3 questions come in and some views on what we've been talking about. If there is anybody who would like to come on live with myself and Chris, camera, microphone, etc., you like to ask your question, because they've got some very long questions here, and I suspect it's going to be easier if you ask the question rather than me try and read it out. So if anybody would like to come on live, please just let Craig know in the comments or via Twitter, and I'll invite you on probably in about the next 10 minutes or so. Okay, so this is a question from Kim Lehman. Chris, what is your take of the remakes being made today, such as Martyrs? Any remakes you like better than the original?
Yeah, I mean, if you go, I'm currently the editor of a LA-based website called Shock Till You Drop, and I gushed over recently, I think it's still in the feed from the past week maybe, what I think is one of the great examples of a remake, if not bettering the source, then certainly existing on its own as a standalone film and advancing the themes of the original. And that's 1978's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, directed by Philip Kaufman, starring Donald Sutherland, Jeff Goldblum, Leonard Nimoy, Brooke Adams. One of the first horror movies I ever saw, actually, as a child. And certainly a film that is, to me, one of the greatest nightmares ever captured on film. And a movie that, again, your perspective on the ride depends on when you get on the train, but this movie hit me so hard when I was about 4 or 5, when I saw it on television, or at least parts of it on television. But then later watching it in its entirety, where, that's why I've always kind of liked horror films that I've never liked slasher movies. I've never liked kind of, base meat and potatoes horror stuff. I've liked movies that are a little bit more cerebral, that are about something else. And Body Snatchers, in any of its incarnations, but most potently in the 1978 version, I think is just, again, about the complete loss of identity and the terror of that, of not being able to connect, which is a big thing for me in cinema. And I think it works just as well today as it did in 78. Whereas I think that the 56 version does not work as well anymore. I think it has aged to a degree. I think the 78 one has not. So that's a great example of a remake that done well. Advancing themes that were originally explored in the original, not absorbing the original or trying to duplicate it like Gus Van Sant's ridiculous Psycho, but creating a companion film, if not kind of an almost sequel-esque film. The Fly is another one. Cronenberg's The Fly. John Carpenter's The Thing. We can go on and on and on about the great remakes. Now, as far as today's trend of, we say today, this has been going on since about 94, 95, maybe a little past that, but remaking movies.
it's even older than that. It's the first movie to be remade was Frankenstein by Thomas Edison.
Well, by Hammer, is that what you? I mean,
No, no, by
again, this is
Thomas Edison. No, I mean
oh yeah, of course, yeah,
the first
absolutely,
film.
yeah.
People just kept,
Yes,
the first thing they saw a film. I
yes.
mean, and then that's what they think. Because every time somebody looks at a classic film, somebody's going to think, oh
Mhm.
well, no, that inspires me to. I think you mentioned it slightly when you were speaking earlier. Is like you get a response. And I think if you're a
Mhm.
creative person, you want to add your voice to this, that there's
Yes.
something that you want, that there's something you want to say about this. I mean, obviously there are great thematic things that we're dealing with the undead and so on. If you think about vampires, we all want because there, as you say, again, you alluded to earlier on, if you have a truth that you want to speak about something, you're going to want to. And often that means dealing with something that has inspired you to have those thoughts in the first place. So I think, yeah,
Well,
no, I agree with it. There's some
well,
great.
like, I mean, and that was George Romero's. You're talking about zombies thing, is that he was, and to this day, I mean, the guy wants to make European art house films, but he'll never get the money to do that. So he has to
Mm,
keep making zombie movies. But then he just hides other stuff he wants to say underneath it. He'll give you the zombies, he'll give you people eating people, a couple shocks here and there, but underneath it, he's really doing something else. His last movie, Survival of the Dead, was really just a remake of The Big Country, the Western film with Gregory Peck. He just threw some zombies in there, right? So, but yeah, I mean, you're right. The remakes, I mean, and people forget that. We worship Hammer films as these, avant-garde, amazing movies that changed everything. But again, that's all they were was remakes of the Universal films in their initial stages, right? Just trying to recapture the commercial value of those movies and kind of reset them for a new demographic with some color and more sexuality to hook the kids at the time. But today it's the same thing. Um, Hollywood is so afraid of losing money. They don't want to lose money. They want something that's going to market easily, and they're looking for brand names, things that have already proven and tested well in the market. Um, if whoever is releasing a remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre owns the rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, then they're smart. They're going to re-release the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, maybe on Blu-ray at the same time that they release their new version, and then get bigger bang for their buck. I mean, it's just money. I mean, it's always about money. I mean, we can get angry and light the torches about being, what Hollywood's all about, money. Like, there's no Santa Claus, right? We know that this is a machine that employs millions of people. This is all about making money and creating entertainment. It's commerce. I mean, that's just what it is. And that's why I think with horror movies, once you get past all that, 20 years, I say 10 to 20 years, remove that movie from its machine. It sits on its own. You have no expectations about what it's going to be or what it should be. And the movie tends to work. And I think that goes with a lot of these remakes too. I went back and revisited the awful, at the time, I thought it was Nightmare on Elm Street remake from a few years ago. And while it's not a great movie, you do compare it, and this is sacrilege. A lot of people are going to kill me about this, but technically, you compare it to the original film, and it's a better film. I mean, it is. And I know a lot of kids who saw the remake before they ever saw the original will now swear by the remake. That's their Freddy Krueger. That's their Nightmare on Elm Street. And it's not mine, but there's nothing wrong with that. Again, your perspective on the ride depends on when you get on the train.
Oh, yeah, no, that's very interesting. I think the this was came up this is fairly common. It is absolutely when somebody first comes across it, that is your movie, your first experience of it. I'm just trying to garner some whilst I ask you the next question. I'm going to be one of the questions I did want to ask you. You worked for Fangoria. You Am I right in thinking that you were responsible for bringing back Gorezone under the
Yeah.
Fangoria banner?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit
So,
about that, please.
well, when I took over Fangoria, which was an amazing thing about 6 years ago, as editor in chief, um, I was lucky in the sense that, financially, it was not in the same position it was 20 years prior, but I was given full creative control of it. So I could do basically whatever I want. If I could find a way to make it work and not lose money, then we could do it. So immediately, I not only brought back Gorezone, but I created a bunch of I called Fangoria Legends, which were like tribute issues to major figures in the genre. I think we printed about 5 or 6 of those. A lot of one shots. It was like a child with a new toy. I was the guy making the magazine. That was my Bible as a child, and I could do basically whatever I want with it. And I had a lot of stories to tell. And one of them was Gorezone was such a huge deal for me as a child. Chaz Ballin, Tim Lucas, that I could bring that back, and I had that power. I had to do it. You know, it would be missed opportunity if I didn't actually do that. So I did, and I'm proud of what I did with Fango, and I think I made close to 100 issues all set, and it was a good run. Yeah, no regrets.
It was, but you latterly you've moved on from Fangoria. What is it that you're working on now? What is it that what else are you working on at the moment? Now Fangoria isn't taking up all your time.
Well, I did. You know, I Fangoria, it was my creative outlet to some degree, but it was also my job. So my new job, quote unquote, is the managing editor of ShockTillYouDrop.com. And I wanted to do that. You know, some people say, well, why did you trade up print magazine, the prestige of Fangoria, for an online outlet, which is, you know, doesn't have the same cachet? And to me, it was, I'm a writer. I like to write. I like to express. And, you know, you're making 10 issues a year of a magazine, and you can only write 2 or 3 things in there. And there's a lot of outside pressures where you're constantly concerned about spinning so many plates that your brain starts to short circuit. It's like, you know what? I just want to write. I want to do a bunch of shit. I want to try a new outlet and just be more fluid. Let me off my leash. I want to go. So I was lucky enough to get this job being the managing editor of this website. And again, complete creative freedom. We're doing a whole revamp of it. It looks amazing. I think we're launching that next week. And just playing around with new columns, new ideas, new writers, new weird stuff. And I'm writing a lot, man. I'm like writing like 5-10 pieces a day. It's crazy, and I love it. So that's what I'm doing in the daylight hours. When the sun sets, however, I am again in pre-production for my next film, which is Black Glove Killer, and stars goth rocker Peter Murphy. It's mentored by my friend Nicholas Winding Refn, and Nivek Ogre from Skinny Puppy, who was in my previous film Queen of Blood, and some other interesting people. And we're shooting that all in Canada, in Toronto, and just outside of Toronto. And then I got back into making music. I released an album through a label called Giallo Disco this year called Music for Murder. It's right there, Music for Murder. And we're having a release party. It's the first time I performed live in 10 years on the 21st of January in Toronto. And blood and gore and visuals and electronics and live drums. And it's I'm pretty excited. Pretty excited.
Oh, that is very interesting, because I was sorry. How long did you say it was since you've actually performed live?
10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
Is that just exciting, or is it slightly scary, or is it? How do you feel about that?
You know, I one thing I found about anything is that if something is slightly scary, if you're outside of your comfort zone a little bit, you're in a good place. You know, creatively, I think. And when things get to the point where it's, you know, with Fango, and some things are becoming a job, and they're becoming routine, then you should stop that as soon as possible. So it is a little bit scary to get back into playing live, but it's also incredibly exciting because there's just so much potential there to just create and do something new that I haven't done before. And scared, but more the excitement trumps the fear, I think.
Oh, interesting. And very astute as well. And that, yeah, you're constantly, as I wrote in a recent thing about my short film, is like, there's a lovely quotation from the poet Robert Browning. At our reach might outstretch our grasp, or what's a heaven for? Mm-hmm. You constantly have to strive. Now, we've got a couple of other gentlemen who've just joined us, Don and Derek. Don, would you like to unmute yourself? I can't unmute you now. I've muted you. So, Don, would you, he's signaling crazily. Let me just see if Don. Do you know how to? Don can. Yeah. Oh,
there we go.
Hello, Don.
Hello, hello. Hello, Mr. Nick. Hello, Chris. How are you?
Good.
Quick question for you, dude. What was it like working with Ogre on your? I think it's your most recent film. I think.
Yeah, Ogre is he's in my next one too, but that was my second film, but it just got released on Blu-ray. I mean, Ogre, I've known Ogre for years. I've been a Skinny Puppy fit. My two favorite bands are like Kiss and Skinny Puppy. One was my childhood favorite band, and the other one was I took Gene Simmons to the next level, a little bit more sophisticated version, and that was Ogre. He was my famous monster. He was my one of my first monsters, and you know, it was unbelievable. It was unfucking believable and surreal bringing him to my home and to my life and telling him what to do, which was insane for me. It's just it's one of those things that every single thing that I've done in my life professionally, I have to pinch myself, and it doesn't seem like I've done it. It's like I forget that it's actually happened because it's just so illogical to have done that. And so yeah, Ogre's a friend of mine. I'm glad to count him that as a friend. And I think he's one of the greatest performers that pop culture has ever known, and I don't think he's been properly tapped yet. I don't think even my film, which I think we did some good things with, but we didn't have the budget or the time to really give you the full Ogre experience. But I don't think even prior to that, cinema has properly captured what's so amazing about this guy on stage. And I'm really waiting for the movie. I'm going to try with the next one. But I'm hoping more people employ Ogre as an actor because he's such an amazing, fluid, physical, animalistic presence that he needs some really good movies to capture that.
Good. I'm going to ask Derek, would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Of course.
Ah, there you are. And you have a question for Chris?
Well, first off, Happy New Year to everybody.
Happy New Year, sir.
I don't think I've said that to you yet. Kudos, by the way, Chris, on the Puppet Master figurines behind you. I just watched that the other day again.
Yeah, cheers, man. Yeah, one of the things I do, I forgot about is that my friend Charlie Band and I started a magazine a couple of years ago called Delirium.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's Charlie and I run it and own it. And you go to fullmoondirect.com, you can subscribe. But I'm a Puppet Master fan, but I'm also like an Empire Pictures fan. I'm a Charlie Band fan. Nice. And so to have him in my life too, I always end up getting cool stuff like this sent to me, which is just like another amazing thing. So yes on Charlie Band, yes on Puppet Master for sure.
Second thing, when you're coughing, good tip for you here: breathe through your nose, stops you coughing.
Thank you. I'm trying. My nose is so filled with snot. This is the problem. There's nowhere to go. Can I breathe through my ears? Then
possibly.
Yeah.
But my question for you is, well, it's more of a statement coming into a question. But I am fed up of dumb characters in horror movies. You know, people who do the most obviously wrong thing that they could ever think of, including the immortal line of, "I know what we could do. Let's split up." So I want to know if you would like to see a horror movie with some intelligent characters who actually were a bit more savvy to what was going on. You know, they don't run straight into the monster, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can attribute dumb things in horror movies to dumb people making horror movies. I mean, that's just the way it is. Horror movies can be incredibly evolved and amazing experiences, but then by and large, they're not made by the most sophisticated lot. I mean, that's not something, I'm not trying to be derogatory, but it's just very easy for people to think that they can make a successful horror movie if they have a bucket of blood, they can get one of their friends naked, and they can, have a nice forest behind them that they can run around in. Or maybe they got a nice mask they can put on some big local guy that will walk around with a machete. And, but it's not that easy, obviously, to do that. And I just think, when you have scripts like that where people do this and say the stupidest things, it's very hard to stick with these movies and lose yourself in them. And that's why, in my movies, I actually took out the dialogue in the first two because I wanted to create kind of pure cinema, because I know in a lot of these horror movies that this exposition is what kills it. We don't need to know what you're going to do. You don't have to tell us that. We understand. Give me a good character doing something interesting. I'll follow them wherever they go. They don't have to tell me what they're fucking doing. First of all, that's horrible. And the second thing is a lot of producers will insert stupid things into the movies. A lot of times it's not the director's fault. They think that they have to meet their quota of cliches in order for it to be a movie that's going to hit well with their demographic. And a lot of producers think that people that watch horror movies are generally stupid as well. They have disdain for us. So they keep, sorry, trying to breathe through my ears. Keep giving us stupid characters doing stupid things. But again, I'll say it again. If you're at that point now where you're watching horror movies, general American Hollywood horror films, and you're sick of them, then start looking elsewhere. Go to Asia, go to Germany or Spain. My God, Spain or Mexico. Mexico is, there's some great horror coming out of Mexico. Argentina, Latin America, full stop, is making some really amazing progressive horror films. Canada, even, all over the place, and elsewhere. And then again, look for movies that are trying to pretend that they're not horror movies and find your horror in there. So just be a little bit more daring and let the idiots be idiots and play to the idiots and let that go. Walk away, man. Walk away.
Yeah, because just buying the tickets just encourages people to carry on making these. The fact, there is, as you said before, it's a commercial process that we're discussing here. Derek, thank you very much indeed for your question. Jonathan, would you like to unmute yourself and come on? He's just trying that now. Yes. Hi, Jonathan.
Happy New Year to all of you.
Thank you. You too.
Yes, thank you. So yes, my question: horror in video games, Chris. Have you played any before? What's your video games, and what's your opinion on their influence? Should there be more of them or less of them? What's your opinion on horror in video games?
Well, I don't have one in the sense that I don't play video games. I just don't have the patience. I've never have. I'm not very coordinated, and if I die more than 3 times, I just throw the controller through a window. I just don't have. My kids are really good at this shit, and I kind of live vicariously watching them play, which is interesting. But I'm just not a gamer guy, and plus I get bored really easily. And if I'm trapped playing this game and I feel that stress of being trapped in an environment, I have to pull myself out and do something else. I can't do it. So I've never been a gamer. But to talk about their influence, I think horror gaming has radically changed the fabric of contemporary horror filmmaking. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if it wasn't for the Resident Evil games, I don't think you would have the Walking Dead. If it wasn't for Resident Evil, you wouldn't have the insurgence of zombie movies at all. George Romero wouldn't have been able to make Land of the Dead. He would be still sitting in limbo somewhere. So it was, horror gaming changed everything. And I, generally like a lot of horror movies based on games. I think Silent Hill, the first one, is a fucking masterpiece. I don't know how close it is to the game because I've never played the game, but it feels like I'm trapped in some sort of nightmarish video game. And I think it's an amazing piece of surrealism. And then, and there's no criticism there because video games are structured in levels where you go to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And I mean, so are horror movies, right? You go into the dark house, you're going to go through the different rooms until you end up with the lead bastard who's going to try to take you out. I mean, that's horror movies. I mean, it lends itself to that. So I think horror games are great, not for me. And certainly they've changed everything when it comes to contemporary horror filmmaking, I think.
And I think it's not just contemporary horror filmmaking, it's contemporary filmmaking. It's very noticeable now that a lot of the stuff that we are seeing is just either they're making games into movies. I think we've got at least 2 or 3 coming up in the next 6 months looking at the trailers on IMDb. But the style of filmmaking and the way that action is presented and so on. Now, for people of my generation, when I look at the Tarzan, for example, the Tarzan movie,
right.
It's like, no, I actually want to see somebody physically swinging through trees. That's really, I want to see a stunt man.
Give me Johnny Weissmuller. I just cycled through all of those movies with my kids, and those are fucking fantastic movies. No CGI at all, and just badass, man. I agree with you there, totally.
Yeah, it just don't let your ball near any more video game movies, says Derek. I'm going to, Jonathan, thank you very much indeed for your question, and I will ask, actually, yes, and I will come back to you. I'm just going to mute you for the moment, just whilst I give, just so that we don't get feedback. That's why I'm muting you, gentlemen. This is another question from Kim Lehman, and we're moving towards the end of the show now. Chris, what do you think of the term torture porn in horror films today? What do you think of censorship of film?
Well, do people still use the term torture porn anymore? I don't know. If they do, then they got to kind of wake up. I mean, that was something that kind of came to the front when Eli Roth made Hostel, or the first Saw movie came out. And then there was that wave of movies where I always say it's like watching people get stepping on flowers, where we're just people are getting hurt for the sake of being hurt. I mean, but it wasn't a movement. It wasn't self-consciously a bunch of filmmakers getting together trying to create torture porn. That was something that some critic had laid on it and then kind of stuck. I don't know if they're around anymore. I don't think if people use that as much anymore. But, you know, a label's a label is a label. Even using the word horror sometimes is stupid. Because, you know, what is a horror movie? What are the rules to make a horror movie? What needs to be in a movie for it to be a horror movie? What's a thriller? What's a, you know, it's all these different genres. Genre is just an easy way for us to market films, I mean, and absorb them. So I've never really paid much attention to things like that. Calling it torture porn, if it makes it easier for a journalist to convey the kind of movie it is, then okay, fine, whatever. And censorship, oh, obviously, no. I mean, nothing should be censored at all. It's up to the you know, the individual and the parents to watch what's happening. I mean, that's just the way it is. If it exists in art, it exists in the world, I think. And if a child is going to see something that's, and then God knows they can now because they can pick up any tablet or phone or whatever. My son, I walked in on him on an iPhone last week, and there was some preteen girl going, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck." I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I just typed in F-U-C-K." I'm like, "Oh, wow, parental controls. I got to get in there," you know. But if it exists in the world, it exists in art. So we have to be ready as adults to explain the world to our kids. I mean, unfortunately, that's where we are right now. We can't shelter them anymore because it's a crazy fucking world. And we should not censor our art. We're grown-ups. We see history, how stupid censorship is. And the movies that we were terrified of, and, you know, the video nasties that we were terrified of back in 1980, we're laughing at them today. I mean, it's just, no, you just cannot censor stuff. It's up to you to censor it for yourself and for the young minds that you want to protect.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, I think the idea of labeling something and categorizing it and just saying, this is what you can expect going into this, you know, to actually give warnings to parents so that they can make an informed choice without actually having to sit through absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's all that stuff exists. Yeah, absolutely.
And it makes perfect sense. There's a gentleman called John Shelton who's been trying to get on. Unfortunately, Google is not playing, so I'm allowing it. John, if you're still watching and you would like to ask a question of Chris, this is now your last. You'll need to type it in into one of the comments. Craig will bring it up. But I just wanted to, as we are now very rapidly heading towards the close of this show. Chris, you kind of mentioned you're going to be performing for the first time. Where are you performing? What's the next show coming up? And you've got the films coming up, and you've mentioned Shock Till You Drop. But where can people find your stuff? Where is the best place to track what's going on with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, which is down right now because I'm getting it redone. But in the next couple of days, it'll be back up. It's chris-alexander.ca. It's my vanity site. So,
Thank you. I'm so glad you just told me that, because I did try earlier on today, and I'm thinking, I swear this is the right thing, and I put a link on Facebook.
No, you're right. Give it a couple more days, and it'll be back, and it'll be prettier than before. But yeah, it's my vanity site that just has all the bullshit that I'm up to, if you're interested. But I mean, I'm all over the place to some degree. If you're in Toronto, come see me at Cherry Cola's Rock and Roll Boutique on the 21st. We're performing live with Castle If and Rick M. Some very dark Tangerine Dream-esque electronic music by way of Skinny Puppy, and I bring a little bit more visceral electronic music to the stage. And then I'm hopefully going to be touring that to some degree. There's a bunch of conventions around the world that have asked me to perform, and I'm going to be doing that a little bit this year as well. My film, Queen of Blood, is out now on Blu-ray via Severin Films. You can go to severinfilms.com, I think it is, and order it, or you can go to Amazon or some fine retailers by you. And my third film, Female Werewolf, is due out this year from Artsploitation Films on Blu-ray and DVD and VOD.
And as I know, that you can actually order Blood for Irina as well.
Yeah, but here's the thing. If you order, Severin ended up buying the rights to both my first films, the Irina movies, and they've released Queen of Blood with Blood for Irina is actually on that disc as well. So save your coins if you want just one-stop shopping for my first 2 expressionist movies, then go for it, if you're so inclined.
Right. We've not heard anything from Mr. Shelton. We are coming to the end of this show. I feel, as ever, Chris, we've only ever just kind of scraped the surface of all the stuff that you do and are doing. But thank you so very, very much indeed for joining me. Gentlemen, thank you very much. That's to Derek, to Don, and to Jonathan. Thank you very much indeed for the questions, for joining us live. Thank you to Kim and to David and to everybody else who's been posting questions. I do want to make sure that we've absolutely stuck to the time on this particular show, because Chris is a family.
I do. Yeah, and they're being remarkably quiet right now, which is kind of freaking me out. Usually it sounds like there's a herd of fucking elephants running around, but it's very quiet. I don't know what's happening.
You better go. Yeah, it's like us and the dog. If we don't know, if he's not in the same room and we can't hear him, then I always want to know exactly what's going on.
Well, listen, thank you for putting up with my ridiculous cough. I shuddered at the. Is this thing going to be on YouTube? No, I'm not going to look at it. I can't look at it. I'm a wheezing disaster.
It will be on the YouTube. It will go up on YouTube.
Oh, jeez. But thank you for being patient with my illness.
It's never as bad as it sounds to yourself. It's absolutely fine. It will be up on YouTube. For those of you who are around next week, I am going to be chatting with a gentleman called Brian Moore.
That's a great guy.
Yes, I was going to say I thought you knew of him and his work. Brian's put a couple of busts, Edgar Allan Poe and
Lovecraft.
Thank you. I could see tentacles. The name was entirely escaping.
Yes.
It's just part of the things. He's had an absolutely fascinating career, including sculpting accessories for Barbie dolls. And he'll be joining me next week, so please come join me next week. In the meantime, Chris, thank you very much indeed. Go have fun with your family and your boys. Look forward to speaking to you again soon. And this has been Chattering with Nicholas Vince. I've been chattering with Chris Alexander. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.
You too. Bye.
Cool. And that.